Okay, so we hammered through the AFC, and now probably the more interesting conference, just because, like, I think the AFC North is probably the best division in football, but I mean, I think there's much more parity in the NFC as a whole. Like, I think in the West, just looking at it without diving too deep, I think there's three teams that could make the playoffs. The South, there's probably one. The North, I think there's two teams that could make the playoffs, maybe a third. Probably not, though. And then I think in the East, there's two teams that could make the playoffs. So I think we have a little bit more parity throughout the conference as a whole, as opposed to the AFC, where outside of the North and the East, I guess the East was pretty interesting, but outside of the North and the East, it was really kind of just straightforward, and we were able to bang that out. So we're gonna do the East and the South, you said, just to kind of mix it up a little bit.
Yep.
All right. So if we want to start with the East, we'll run through the rankings of last year. We had the Cowboys, who I think had they were tied with the Lions and the 49ers for best record in the conference, 12-5. They came in first. They were 8-0 in Dallas in the regular season, which is crazy. And then we had the Eagles at 11-6, also made the playoffs. The Giants at 6-11, and the Commanders at 4-13. I mean, I think that the top of the division will probably flip, and I think the bottom of the division is really up for grabs. Like, I don't think the Commanders are going to be good, but they've
Right.
got a lot of new pieces coming in, so there could be some surprises. The Giants, I think, are going to be worse, and they're returning a bunch of pieces. So I think we kind of know what's going to happen there. But yeah, I mean, let's start at the top, right? Let's start with the Cowboys. They
Right.
um, they went 12-5. They scored the most points in the NFC. They scored the most points in football in the regular season, and they didn't give up the least points in football, but they had a net point differential of 194. So they were an offensive juggernaut, and they kept people out of the end zone. Like I said, they went 8-0 at home, 4-5 on the road. So big difference there. In the division, they were 5-1, capitalizing on a weak division or weaker division. Um, in the conference, they were 9-3, non-conference 3-2, and then obviously choked in the playoffs as Dak and the Cowboys do. Changes: they get rid of Tony Pollard, bring back Zeke. I think they had some losses on the offensive line, if I'm not mistaken, too.
They lost their center. He signed with, I believe, Washington,
Mm-hmm.
and they lost Tyron Smith. But if I'm remembering correctly, I think Tyron Smith's only played like uh, fewer than 12 games the last 2 years. Like I think they still have a top five offensive line according to PFF.
That would make sense. I do think that they're going to be worse on offense, though. Like, I think outside of CD, they're kind of weak, and they don't really have a running game. I mean, old man Zeke is not going to
Yeah.
turn
So
back
he
turn back the
had,
clock.
damn, Tyron Smith has not played a full season since 2015. Since 2020, he has played 2, 11, 4, and 13 games. So he's been pretty banged up.
Yeah,
Um,
and well, he played 13 games last year. It looks like.
yeah,
Yeah, but then 4, 11, 2, 13. Yeah,
yeah.
so yeah, he really. I don't. He hasn't played it. You're right. Hasn't played a full season since 2015. He also signed with the Jets, not Washington.
No, the center, Biotish, signed with
Oh,
Washington.
oh, got him confused. Yeah, Tyron Smith went to the Jets though.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I just from doing a quick deep glance, I do think that this team is going to be worse than they were last year. Safe to say.
Um, I don't know.
They'll probably have a tougher schedule if because they came in first place, right? I haven't looked at their schedule yet, but
Yeah,
let's
at a
see.
glance, it didn't look particularly hard. Um,
Okay.
because I
Oh, they
believe
did sign Royce Freeman, so they're going to have a good running game. Your
so
boy.
the East plays the AFC North, tough division, but they also get the NFC South, which is not a tough division. So, and then you factor in you get 4 games against the Giants and the Cowboys. So like I think you're looking at they probably don't win 12 games, but I think their offense is likely to actually be better.
How so?
Um, continuity on the offensive line. I think you're looking at they drafted a tackle from Oklahoma. So yes, he's a rookie, but you have the best interior line in football with like 2 Pro Bowl or All Pro guards and Zach Martin and Tyler Smith. And if it doesn't work, Tyler Smith can play left tackle, and then you could
Mm-hmm.
slide Guyton into left guard. So I'm not worried about their line. Their running game has to be better than last year. It was incredibly inefficient with Tony Pollard.
Yeah,
I
it wasn't great, but I don't like just the pieces in place. I don't see it being much better. I could probably see it being worse.
Yeah, and I think Mike Zimmer's the DC instead of Dan Quinn, right? So I do think the defense will be interesting. I think the defense is likely to be a worse scoring defense, but a better defense. Like last year, they could not stop the run at all. And like Dan Quinn's kind of an overrated DC. Like if you
Yeah, I
look at
think
his
so.
teams in Atlanta, so I actually expect their defense to be better with Mike Zimmer.
Okay.
So,
I just think
um,
if I'm a defensive coordinator, right, and I'm coming in to stop the Cowboys, I am double teaming CD on every single play. I'm gonna
right.
let I'm gonna let Cooks and Tolbert and Ferguson beat me. I'm gonna let Zeke, try and beat me, right? I'm not putting
the
like 8 in the box to stop Zeke.
the
And
problem is all of the targets they get for CD where he's in motion or he's in the slot, and like you can't. It's the right. It's the Tyler. It's the Sean McVay Cooper Cup offense from the Rams where like how the hell did this guy just get matched up on a linebacker and like
yeah.
all of a sudden it's like a 40-yard gain.
Oh yeah, dude, I'm not saying that they're gonna be able to shut him down by any means, but we have a year of tape in this scheme. We have a year of tape with CD getting 8,000 targets. I think at some point, somebody other than CD has to get the ball. Cooks is 100. Zeke looks like he's 100. Um, I'll let Jalen Tolbert beat me. And if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Like if he snaps and I lose, fine. But like, I think there has to be somebody else, right?
So I'm looking at the offensive tackle. Last year, he didn't allow a sack and 355 pass blocking reps at Oklahoma, but he only earned a 59 PFF true pass blocking grade.
What did Tristan Wirfs have coming out of college? Because he was the last like offensive tackle that I can think of that came to the league and immediately was like, okay, this is a guy.
I feel like there have been maybe more since then, but
I think he gave up 1 sack his rookie year, and it was like to Khalil Mack.
right. Um, yes, he had 461 pass block snaps, 2 sacks. Um, but they don't. 88 in pass protection, 90 as a run blocker,
Hmm.
but he gave up more sacks. So I don't even know how this is calculated, but I just thought that was interesting. You don't allow a sack and you score 59 in their grades.
Yeah, I'm not sure how they calculate it, but sometimes
Well, and
they're
then the
right.
center they grabbed has a 91.8 pass blocking grade, first among all guards in that span. So I guess he's going to play center. So I don't.
Maybe I need to just start grabbing Brandon Cooks as my last pick in every draft, right?
Oh, dude, this tackle's 6'7", 325.
Tiny.
Uh,
All right, you want to start looking at their schedule?
yeah, but first I want to look at this guy's combine scores. Wow,
We're
uh,
getting derailed real quick into this one.
okay, 6'8", 322 at the combine. Um,
What do you
his
bench?
so his wingspan is 40-yard dash 519, three cone 75, vertical 34.5. That's pretty nuts.
Big boy gets up.
Shuttle 471, broad jump 811. Yeah, they don't list his bench. All right,
All
we
right.
get into the schedule. I'm done.
So I think we've already done a portion of this schedule because they do play the AFC North.
Right.
So we've got them. I think we had them losing. We have them losing to the Browns week 1. It's in Cleveland.
Yep.
Yeah. So then they get the Saints at home. I think they win that game.
Right.
Then they get the Ravens at home. How did we score this one?
I think we coin flipped it.
Okay, I'll stick with that because I think the Ravens are a better team on paper, but the Cowboys at home
Right.
haven't lost. They haven't lost in over a year. You know,
That's I think
actually,
that
wasn't the playoff game was at home, wasn't it?
yeah,
Okay, so
they lost to the
maybe
Packers at
they
home.
lost to the Packers, right? So I would lean Ravens, but I think this is worthy of a coin flip. Um, they get the Giants in New York. I think that's a win. Then they get the Steelers in Pittsburgh. What did we score this one?
Or win.
A win? Okay. So then they're
Because they
four.
had the 10 days off here because they play Thursday against the Giants.
Right. Okay. So that's 0 and 1, 1 and 1, coin flip, 1 and 1, 2 1 and 1, 3 1 and 1. So they're 3 1 and 1 going into the Lions coming to Dallas. And how did we score this game? Because this
We
is tough.
haven't because we
I know.
haven't done the
Yeah,
Lions yet.
I realized that when I said it. So how do we score this game though? Because again, I mean Dallas is playing at home, right? But I think the Lions got better on defense, and they, for all intents and purposes, should have beat Dallas last year in Dallas, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a coin flip, like because it's Dallas at home, but it's also the Lions.
Yeah, that's fair. It's a dome, and so I'll give the Lions some credit there, but Cowboys are
And
so good
last
at
year's
home.
game was basically a coin.
Yeah,
Like,
last year the game was literally a coin flip. If the refs, it all
right,
came down to the refs. So what? They're 4-1-2 right now going into the bye.
3-1-2.
3-1-2. Okay, so they're 3-1-2 going into their bye, and then they come out of the bye and go immediately to San Francisco. I still think this is probably a loss.
Yeah, the one thing, San Francisco plays the Chiefs the week before at home.
Okay,
So that's the one. So they don't have
tough.
to travel.
They don't have to travel, but it's a tough back-to-back games. But
Right.
didn't San Fran like just whip the crap out of them last year?
Yeah.
I think
And I
San
think that
Fran's a
was
better
in
team.
San Francisco too.
Yeah. So I mean, I still think San Francisco is a better team.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give this one an L. So then they go to Atlanta.
I
That's
think that's the
probably a
win.
win. Then, all right, so now we're getting into the interesting divisional matchup against the Eagles. Now, this is in Dallas. I guess, are we giving them a split?
I would think Cowboys and Eagles split, and then both of them beat the Commanders and
The
Giants.
Giants. Yeah, I think that's fair. So we'll give this one to the Cowboys. We've already scored this game. The Texans coming into Dallas.
Right, which we had as a coin flip
Yeah, I think that's fair too.
because they both get the Monday night rest, but it's like for
It's
Houston,
it's
it's
essentially
not.
a home game for both teams.
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think that's fair. Then we've got the Commanders as a win. The Giants as a win. We've scored this game too. The Bengals going to Dallas.
yes, and I think we gave it to the Cowboys because it was at home, but there is a possibility. I'd have to go look at the Bengals schedule
Yeah.
to see because the Bengals only had two. I mean,
Do
two.
I don't I have the Bengals going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah,
All right. I'm taking the Bengals in this game.
yeah. We scored this as one of their losses because it was on the road, and we coin flipped the Eagles at home and the Chiefs on the road, and then we
Okay.
gave losses to um, right Ravens, Browns.
Yeah, something like that. Okay.
Uh,
All right. That's fine. So they win this game. Then they go to Carolina. That's a win. Then Tampa comes to Dallas. So that's an obvious loss. And then they go to Philly and lose. And then they get the Commanders to close out the year and they win. So after the Bengals, they split. I mean, they split. After the Bengals, they beat the Panthers. They lose to the Bucks, and then they lose to the Eagles and beat the Commanders. So they either go 3-1 or 2-2, depending on who's judging.
yeah, I mean, this is interesting.
The fact that they have to play the AFC North is tough.
Right, but they get the Ravens at home, and I
The
mean the
Bengals at home.
Bengals at home,
Yeah.
and you get the Steelers on the road, but with extra rest.
Yeah. I mean,
And
technically, they get the most rest for the Browns on the road, but the Browns are also a very good home team. And I think that they're going to be too much.
but I think the Steelers the week before play like the Ravens too.
Yeah.
Uh,
I remember that.
no, they play the Colts. They're at the Colts, which is not an easy game.
No, it's not. All right. So what do we have them at?
11-3-3.
I think that's pretty reasonable. I mean, at worst, they finish a game worse than they did last year. At best, they're what, 14-3?
Right. Yeah, and I mean
Which,
you could throw the Bengals in there and they're 10-3-4. Like I think that to a coin flip game, but it's tough to argue with the fact they were 10-0 last year or 8-0 last year at home. And I think
until the playoffs, yeah.
right, I think before the playoffs they were like 15-0, like they'd won 15 or 14 in a row at home. Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So,
Look, they're a great home team. They play very well in Dallas.
right.
If they get home field advantage, well, I mean, we can't even say that. They're like the NFC's Jets, right? Like at some point they're gonna rip your heart out,
Yeah.
you know,
Until they prove otherwise.
until they prove otherwise. Yeah, like I'm gonna pick them to, have a good regular season, and then just whoever they play in the playoffs are gonna collapse at some point. The Eagles is going to be interesting though, because I think that this could be the best team in the NFC, and I think you're also on that same bandwagon, or at the very least, could be the best offense in the NFC.
They have such an early bye week.
Yeah, they really do. So they start the year. I mean, well, we additions and subtractions, right? They lose Swift, they gain Barkley. That's a huge win. They lose their offensive coordinator and gain. They got Kellen Moore.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a huge win in my opinion, because their offensive coordinator last year, arguably the reason why they were so bad down the stretch.
Right. So they lost Swift. They lost Hassan Reddick to the Jets,
They lost Kelsey to retirement.
and they lost Nicholas Morrow to the Bills, and
They got
Byard
they
left.
gained Devin White too.
Right. Well, they signed Oren Burks
Yeah,
from the Niners. They signed Gardner Johnson, who was there before. They
yeah,
brought Bryce Huff in to replace Hassan Reddick. Um, and then they brought in Devin White. Yeah. So basically and then they drafted DeJean and the other corner.
yeah.
Uh,
So they added pieces on defense. They reworked their offensive philosophy. It'll be interesting to see how they do tush push
and Vic
wise post
Fangio's their
Kelsey.
DC too, so he's an upgrade over Patricia.
Yeah. Oh, 100%. Anything's an upgrade over Patricia. But it'll be interesting to see how they do tush push post Kelsey because he was a big reason why that was successful. But everybody that I've talked to that's an Eagles fan that like knows what's going on has said that whoever the guy is that they're replacing him with is like is good. Like he was touted by Kelsey as like this guy can play.
Well, he's been their
He's like
right
their
guard
yeah, he was their guard, and they're just moving him over to center.
for like 3 or 4 years, and they drafted him a while ago to replace Kelsey.
Yeah,
So I'm looking their secondary now. Avante Maddox, they had him. Isaiah Rogers, uh, Darius Slay, C.J. Gardner Johnson, um, Blankenship. Then they got Quinyon Mitchell, the guy I think from Alabama. James Bradbury is still there. Cooper DeJean, Sidney Brown. Like I'm looking at their 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and Keely Ringo from last year. They probably have like 10 guys who can play in the secondary this year, which was their worst, right? That was their huge like on their depth chart, they have 5 starters, right? And then, but you also like that doesn't include Bradbury, Cooper DeJean, Quinyon Mitchell, Sidney Brown, Keely Ringo, who they took last year. So like you're 10 deep in the secondary, safeties, corners, Nick. Like that's pretty
yeah.
nuts.
Yeah, it's nuts, and it's important too because the way that they play defense, and they're always rotating in linemen and linebackers, and if they can do that in the secondary as well, they're always going to have fresh legs in there, which is going to be
Right. You
important.
look at like when Fangio had the Dolphins defense humming, it was with the pass rushers, but the secondary was elite too.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, first week of the season, this is the like Brazil game, right, against the Packers.
And we gave it to the Eagles because we thought they were better straight. Or I guess we didn't pick it yet.
No, yeah, we
Because,
didn't pick it yet. We talked about it, I think, somehow, but we didn't pick
right.
it. Yeah. So, I mean, like, it's it's essentially a London game, right? I mean, it's the same time zone, I think, right? But is what time zone is Brazil in?
I think I think Sao Paulo is central.
Well, Brasilia Standard Time.
Oh, it's an hour ahead.
Okay. I mean, like that's not the worst. You're kicking off at what? It's 7 o'clock instead
Yeah.
of eight
So
o'clock.
it's an hour ahead. So it favors East Coast because the Packers are 2 hours, right? Because they're central time. So they're
Yeah.
2 time zones. But
Yeah. So it's a big travel day, but like it's not as much of a jet
But
lag
you're probably
difference.
traveling earlier now. Yeah, I don't. I would pick the Eagles, like straight up. Eagles, Packers.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. But I do think the Packers are going to make it a game. Like I wouldn't be surprised if they win, but I
Right.
can see that. So then they get the Falcons coming to Philly. I think that's a win. They go to New Orleans. That's a win. They go to Tampa. That's obviously a loss. And then they've got a bye.
Right.
So that's 1, 2, 3. So they're either 4-0 or 3-1, depending on who's scoring going into their bye week.
Right. And so This was the one Browns game we coin flipped, was this Eagles game.
Yeah, because they're in Philly.
Right.
Okay. So then we coin flip that. Then they've got the Giants. That's a win. They go to Cincy. We coin flipped this one too, or did we give this one to? What did we do with this one?
We coin flipped this one.
Okay. Then they go. Then the Jaguars come to Philly. I think that's a win. They
Yeah,
go
this
to
is the worst
Dallas.
game.
Yeah, they go to Dallas. We just gave them a loss. The Commanders win. They go to Los Angeles to play the Rams.
I will say if we don't, the Ravens is a coin flip and we have them beating the Cowboys. This is the only game that's not accounted for in terms of like wins, loss, coin flips here.
Remaining.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, the Eagles last year, they were 6-2 at home. They were 5-4 on the road. The Rams were 5-3 at home, 5-4 on the road. I don't know how much of a home field advantage Los Angeles actually is.
Right.
But I think the Rams are a good team, and this is an East Coast team traveling to the West Coast.
Right. They do have, I'm just seeing that they play Thursday before. They have 10 days off.
No, they play. Oh, yeah, yeah. Sorry, I was looking at the wrong thing. Yeah, so all right, so they'll travel early because it's a Thursday game.
I mean, we'd give it to the Rams.
Okay.
Or we could coin flip it if you want. I don't.
Well, what did we give the Ravens Eagles game in Baltimore?
Coin flip.
All right. Then yeah, let's coin flip the Rams. We'll coin flip the Ravens. They beat the Panthers. They beat the Steelers. They lose, or no, sorry, they beat the Commanders. They beat the Cowboys, and they beat the Giants. So they end on a 5-game winning streak, I think.
I mean, just at minimum, like 1, 2, 3. So Ravens, Rams, but before that is the Commanders, right? So you have an incredible 8-game stretch where you're probably going like 6-2 or 7-1 and something like.
After the Cowboys game on November 10th, is what
Yeah.
you're saying?
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, yeah, I think they beat. Yeah, I can see them going. Yeah, they're gonna lose. They'll lose 2 games maximum out of this 8-game stretch. I'm okay with that. So what do they end the season at?
12-1-4.
Okay. Yeah, I'm comfortable with that. I think that they're on paper a better team than Dallas. They seem to play well. Like you don't really see the Eagles getting like blown out too much, if I remember correctly. I don't want to look at their
Except
last
for
year
the end of the
schedule.
season.
Yeah,
When they quit. They were getting, I mean, I think
yeah. I
they
mean,
lost to the
well,
Giants by 2 touchdowns at the end of the
they
year.
did. Yeah, I mean, the Bucks smoked them. The Giants smoked them. The Cardinals beat them by 4. Then, I mean, they beat the Giants before that. They lost to the Seahawks. They got
That
crushed by
was
the
the
Cowboys, got crushed by the
no.
49ers. Yeah, all right. So they started off hot. That's what it was. They started off super hot and then just folded.
Yeah, and then the team quit.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting. I could see this team going back to the Super Bowl. I could also see them losing in the playoffs.
Right.
But either way, I think they'll be in the playoffs. Next, I guess we've got the Giants, just going off last year's standings. I think the Giants realistically could be the worst team in football.
It's tough. Patriots are gonna be bad.
Yeah, they're going to be bad, but I think the Giants could also be just as bad. So the Giants, key losses was Saquon and their sanity.
Um,
Key additions are rookies. Oh, and Darren Waller. Key additions are, rookies and right neighbors and whoever else.
And Devin Singletary.
I guess he's a key addition because somebody has to run the ball.
Yeah.
Although Singletary was, when he got the workload, he wasn't bad last year, if I remember correctly.
Right. He was pretty okay.
Yeah. So I mean, we can run through the Giants' schedule though. They get the Vikings at. You want to do something?
Let me look at like who they may have added in free agency.
Yeah, we should.
They did get Brian Burns, the pass
That's
rusher
fair.
from the Panthers, who's kind of good.
Yeah. Devin Singletary's game log last year.
Oh, they signed Jalen Mills. That's funny.
Let's go. Jalen Mills, baby.
Drew Lock.
What is dead may never die.
They signed
so Singletary last year had 900 rushing yards and 4 touchdowns.
Right.
Caught 30 passes for another 200 yards. So he had over 1,000 all-purpose yards, or very close to 1,000 all-purpose yards. No, he had over 1,000 all-purpose yards. Yeah. So I mean, he can play, but he's not Saquon Barkley. Granted, Saquon hasn't been able to stay on the field.
And they still have one of likely the worst lines in football.
Yeah, and maybe one of the worst quarterbacks in football.
So I would pick the Vikings.
Yeah. I think Darnold can get that done. What do we have them doing with the Commanders?
Probably split it.
I think that's safe. So this one they lose then because they're in Washington. They lose to the Browns. They lose to the Cowboys. They lose to the Seahawks. They lose to the Bengals. They lose to the Eagles. They lose to the Steelers. So
they lose. Yeah, then they beat the Commanders.
Then they beat the Commanders. Then they
get the Panthers in Germany.
Oh, that's a Germany game? That's a coin flip.
Yeah.
Okay. So they're like what, 1,000,001 going into their bye?
Yes, 1-8-1.
Okay. Oh, the Bucks on November 24th. When's Thanksgiving this year?
Thursday, November 28th, because that's when they play the Cowboys.
I might have to talk to Mel about going home early for Thanksgiving and going to that game. All right, so yeah, then they play the Bucks. That's a loss, I think. Like all honestly, like I've been, I'm joking around a bit about Tampa, but I do think that we can beat the Giants.
I would agree.
Yeah. So then they lose to the Cowboys. They probably lose to the Saints. They lose to the Ravens, lose to the Falcons, lose to the Colts, and lose to the Eagles. So
yes. Yeah, 1-15-1.
1-15-1. I mean, hard knocks, baby. It's going to be a hard knock life for Giants fans this year. I don't think that they're going to be very good. There's nothing about this team that really excites me. Commanders. The Commanders are at least interesting to talk about because they've got a lot of new pieces. Daniels.
They do have the worst offensive line in football. So that's.
Yeah, but they've got a mobile quarterback, so it evens out. So they've got, Daniels and then Austin Eckler, who I've been contemplating drafting him in a lot of the mocks that I've done over the past couple of days. Because quarterbacks, similar to my philosophy on rookie quarterbacks and tight ends, like rookie quarterbacks and pass catching running backs is a very similar field. Eckler's not going to get all the power
Not with
running
running
workload.
quarterbacks, though. Like if you look, Jaden Daniels in college had like fewer than 20 attempts to running backs while he
That's a
was in.
different. That's a different system.
Okay, so you go back and look at Cliff's system then with Kyler Murray. Like Kyler wasn't thrown to the running back.
Who was their running back?
Connor had a bunch of touchdowns. Um,
Kingsbury was the Cardinals head coach from 2019 to 2023. 2019 Cardinals running back. Also, Cliff Kingsbury's picture as the Washington Commanders is not good. All right. I mean, David Johnson, I guess, was technically the running back in 2019. Yeah, I mean, according to Google. Let's see. How did he do? Oh, Kenyon Drake was on this team.
the Drake.
Yeah. He went 123 for 643 and 8, 28 catches for 171 yards. Okay. Yeah, look, maybe I'm wrong, but it was a thought. Chase Edmonds was on this team. What about the 2020 Cardinals?
It's Drake and Edmonds.
How'd they do pass catching wise? Benjamin. I haven't heard that name in a while.
Right.
Kenyon Drake.
It's tough because I'm looking at Kyler didn't play. It's tough because I can't filter out the games Kyler didn't play, and I can't filter out the attempts that came from different quarterbacks.
So Chase Edmonds had in 2020 had 53 receptions on 67 targets and scored 4 touchdowns. So at least we can say that in a Cliff Kingsbury scheme, it's possible for the running back to get good targets.
That's what I'm saying. I can't filter for the non-Kyler. I mean, look, I'll look at who they were 4-13 in 2022. Yikes, Cliff.
Yeah.
I guess Kyler only played 11 games that year. Oh, right, because he fucking tore his ACL.
Yeah.
So it looks like on average, there are about 70 running back receptions a year with.
In 2020, the year that I just referenced, Kyler played all 16.
Right. And I'm looking at 2021 and 2022. It looks like so one receiving touchdown to the running backs. And they're about 70. In 2021, you're looking at, and these are again, Kyler didn't play all 16, but you're looking at about 70 and 3 touchdowns. So I mean, it's definitely there, right? But if you go look at like Eckler's, like my thing with Eckler is he's not going to be the goal line running back, right? Because they're going to give it to Brian Robinson, who's bigger and younger.
Right. Yeah, look, I'm not saying that I'm like going out of my way to draft Austin Eckler,
right.
But I'm noticing in drafts that like if I'm doing a 0 or an anchor RB build, I'm getting to like the 8th through the 10th rounds, and his name is showing up in ADP, and he's got name recognition, so it always pops. And you look at some of the guys around him, you're taking shots no matter what. I think if he stays healthy, he's probably got the highest floor of the guys that he's going around, just based on the fact that it's going to be a bad team that's going to have to throw the ball, which means he's going to see more passing down snaps just based on game flow than he would have on a different team. And he's going to be the pass catching running back. He's not going to get goal line work, but if he's got 50% of what he had in the tank left, he could catch between 60 and 80 balls and might sneak a touchdown or two in there on any given week. He could
But
be an interesting
I don't
play.
think he can catch more than like maybe 50. Like I don't think he's
Really?
if we're looking at like 70 running back targets for the year or receptions, or maybe we're looking at like 80, right? But just like looking at those guys, it was like James Conner with like 40 or something. Chase
But
Edmonds
Connor was hurt too.
30. Right. That's what I mean. But I just like, if you're telling me that you get, let's say the Washington running backs as a whole get 250 rushing attempts, 8 touchdowns, and 70 receptions, right? You could even say 10 touchdowns, right? If you like,
I think though it's gonna be way 70 receptions on a 17 game spread is only 4 a game. I think it's
right.
gonna be more. I think it's gonna be more than that.
I mean, look at like Lamar though. Like I genuinely think the best comparison we could do probably is going to like Lamar Jackson, like early season stats, and looking at their running back, like how many, like I know Mark Ingram, the year he was the running back, won at 20 receiving receptions all year. And he had like
Yeah.
6 receiving touchdowns. Like I just don't think it.
But that was in a Greg Roman offense. That's a vastly different system than what Cliff is going to run.
Right, but it has more to me to do with the fact that you have a quarterback who's probably going to get 100+ rushing attempts, because if you look at how he played in college, it was either hit my first read, not open, run. Right. Also, I don't know if you watched the Hard Knocks thing, but I guess apparently the Jaden Daniels interview with the Giants, like people were like, "Wow, this dude does not know football." Because they were like
I
asking
saw a small clip from it, but
yeah, they were asking him to like do recon stuff, and they're like, okay, what would you do? He's just like, I'd take off, I'd start running. And I'm very out on him after hearing that, because like we've seen that. Yeah. So Lamar's right. 40 running back receptions, his MVP year in 2019.
Okay.
2020, he played 15 games. RG3 played a game, which is hilarious. 38. I guess 47 because Ricard fullback, but 2. So I just think like in like Drake May or Caleb Williams, like I would agree with you, but I think the reason that everyone is like blowing Jaden Daniels is because they think he's going to get an exorbitant amount of rushing touchdowns, right? Like Lamar's MVP year, he had, where does it show me his rushing attempts? He had 176 rushing attempts, 160 the next year, then 12, 12, 16. So he averages, and then this past year, 150. So you give Jaden Daniels, say, 150 rushing attempts, right? You figure probably like of that 150, like you would imagine. So like Lamar, between rushing attempts in his MVP season and passing attempts, had 576, but there's some crossover, right? Because some passing, I guess there's not, because an attempt means you threw it. So 570, but they were 14-2. So let's say maybe knock 70, 80 plays off there, and you're somewhere around like 480 plays, right? Because they're going to suck. They're not going to be MVP level 14-2. So if you're like, you give me 500 plays and like 250 passing attempts, and then you give me like 150 Jaden Daniels rushing attempt, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's not a lot of room to me for running back attempts, especially because I think they're going to be getting boat race in a lot of games, right? So like that helps
That's
Eckler,
part of
right?
the reason why they're
Right,
going to be running more plays. They're going to be having to throw the ball.
right.
I just
But you
I
look
could
at the
I do see
Seahawks
a
last year. The Seahawks had to throw the ball. They had one of the worst defenses, but they were terrible because they couldn't get first downs, right? So it's like the Chip Kelly Eagles. You remember, like they would go really quickly, but they couldn't get first downs. So their defense was like when it fell apart. That was what happened, right? They would go so
sure.
quick, 3 and out. So I agree in terms of like, I just think if you're telling me like 250 rushing attempts, 10 touchdowns, and like on the high end, like 70 running back receptions, like if Eckler gets 50 receptions, maybe 500 rushing yards, and 5 touchdowns or so, right? Like that's like, I mean, between yards and touchdowns, it's 80 fantasy points. You throw in another 25, that's like 105, maybe. Like he's like 140 point ish player. And like that's maybe RB 30. Like,
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm saying. That's like what I'm saying. I'm not saying that he's going to show up and like, turn into an RB1 or even an RB2, but for where he's being drafted, a lot of the guys in that category or in that territory, like, you know, and these are including guys that I would take over Eckler and will take over Eckler. But you've got like your Charbonnets and your Corums, guys that we've talked about. Corum could not see the field. We're drafting him on the chance that Kyron goes down and Corum has a few usable weeks or potentially gets that whole role. Same with Charbonnet. I think he'll work more into the offense than he did last year, but it's still Walker's role going into the season. We know what Eckler's role is going to be. We know where his spot is going to be on this team, and based on how badly we're projecting him to be, it's a role that he should have. Like it's a role that's going to be on the field. Whether or not Daniels dumps it off to him based on the theories that you're putting out there, sure, there's arguments against him getting elite usage for his role in this offense. But I do think that 50 receptions is like more than likely.
and that's what I'm saying that's to me the high end case. I 100% think Austin Eckler's done, and he may have like 2 or 3 weeks for fantasy, but the rest of the year he's going to be useless. Like I think he's going to be a guy like week 5 is on the waiver wire because it's just like this. He's just not very good. Like I think
Okay.
he's done. But I like so Tyler Algier scored 130 half PPR or half points last year as the running back 34, right? So his game logs were week 1, 23, 4.8, 3.9, 1.7, 6, 5.7, 12.7, 3.1, 10, 4.3, 6.4, 2.6, 4, 5.6, 15.3, 15.3, 4.9, right? So 5 double-digit weeks in there, right? And like you probably didn't start him week 1, and then after that thought you could start him and he killed you, and then you stopped starting him, and then so that's what I mean. Like I'm not happy with that production. I'd rather have the uh like the I'm looking for the
So
like
Eckler had a similar finish, but he missed 3 games. He had 5 double-digit weeks, and the rest of the time he was an RB3 with like a low end RB2 week in there. And he had some awful weeks, like he finished RB 41, 38, 51. But other than that, he was like in the 30s on a pretty bad Los Angeles team. The reason why he was such a bad player last year was because of the price that you had to pay for him.
Right.
But like,
But
I
that's
think
you
that I
just
think we
won't
could
know
be.
the games to start him in. And like I think he's just gonna be like at the end of the year, it'll look okay, right? But I just like you're not gonna know what games to start him in unless
Well, I
Brian
mean,
Robinson.
here's the opposite theory. Then you start him given certain builds, you start him in every game as your RB2. If you've got like a James Cook or a Joe Mixon or somebody as your RB1, or even freaking Zach Moss or something like that, because I think his floor on any given week will be 5 to 7 points, which you're not going to be happy about. But when your options are guys that are legitimate like second stringers, I think he's like in that category of guys that you could start.
I just think you'll get more production from Zach Charbonnet over the course of the entire year. In that, I think you get more production from Chuba Hubbard, to be honest, than
Well,
Austin Eckler.
Chuba's starting.
But I mean, potentially, like we still don't know the Jonathan Brooks, but I just mean
But I
like,
think on the depth chart right now, if the season were to start today, Chuba's the one.
why I think that's because Brooks is on the non-football injury list.
So he's the one.
Um, yeah, and I is Eckler listed as the two for their depth chart?
I don't know. We'll find out.
I have no idea.
No, he's listed as the one.
Yeah, on what website? Our lads or their?
ESPN.
Okay, well it's right there. Commanders.com. What a fucking stupid team name. Because our lads is Brian Robinson listed.
Dude, how is Zach Ertz still in the league?
I don't know.
Oh
I
wow.
mean,
Luke McCaffrey is listed as the starting third receiver for the
yeah, the
Commanders.
slot wide receiver. Yeah.
Yeah.
They don't have Eckler listed on their own website, so that's good. Their own website hasn't even. It has him. It is Brian Robinson, Chris Rodriguez, and nothing about Eckler. So
Okay.
I'm
Just give me
trying to pull up
look. Regardless, I think
ESPN
we've
fantasy football rankings because
we've
go ahead.
I was going to say we've spent entirely too much time talking about this topic. I'm ready to just run through their schedule real quick because it should be pretty straightforward. They they lose to the Bucks week 1. They lose to the Giants, or no, they beat the Giants week 2 because they're at home. Then lose to the Bengals. I think they lose to the Cardinals. They lose to the Browns. They lose to the Ravens. Do you think they beat the Panthers at home?
No,
Yeah, me neither. So then they lose to the Bears. They lose to the Giants. They lose to the Steelers. They lose to the Eagles, the Cowboys. Do you think they beat the Titans at home? I don't think so.
probably not.
Yeah. They lose to the Saints. They lose to the Eagles. They lose to the Falcons. And they lose to the Cowboys. So they beat the Giants at home. And that's it. So they're going to go what, 1-16?
Yeah,
Yeah, I think so. I think they're that bad.
that would be my. I think the Giants are slightly better, but not by much.
Yeah. Okay. So the NFC South.
Well, how do you? So we're both going Eagles, Cowboys, one
I'm
and
going
two.
Eagles, Cow. Yeah, I'm going Eagles, Cowboys, Giants, Washington.
Okay.
But I mean, granted, we have to see how the rest of the conference shakes up. But at this point, I'd probably put the Eagles and the Cowboys as playoff teams. Well, definitely the Eagles, but the Cowboys is a playoff team too.
Dude, what?
So the Buccaneers win the NFC South at 9-8. tied with the Saints, but through a series of tiebreakers, we win the division. And we win a playoff game. And we played the Lions well in Detroit. We made mistakes. The Lions were a better team, and they played better that day. But we played well. We played better than I thought we were going to.
Right.
I want to talk more about this because I think that we talked about this when we signed Baker. How my fear was that Baker would play well enough for us to get stuck in limbo.
Okay, so
okay, let's finish off the Eckler discussion.
he's being drafted as he's ranked as running back 31 on ESPN. The guys going after him, Tony Pollard. I think 17 weeks of playing Tony Pollard, you're going to be happier than Eckler. Raheem Mostert, same thing. Devin Singletary, I also think the same thing. Nick Chubb, I don't think Chubb's going to play much this year.
Yeah.
Gus Edwards, I think you're going to be happier playing Gus Edwards.
For sure.
Zeke, I think you're going to be happier playing Zeke because he's going to score touchdowns on him.
What is he on sleeper ADP?
Eckler.
Yeah.
Well, then this is the like Tyler Algier. I'll take Algier because he's a higher end handcuff. Charbonnet, I'll take him. I'd rather have Eckler than Gibson. I'd rather have Eckler than Chase Brown. I'd rather have Eckler than J.K. Dobbins. Then I'd rather have Jerome Ford, Ty Chandler, Trey Benson, Blake Corum, Rico Dowdle. I will look right now.
Okay. So I'll keep ranting about Baker then. So my fear with us signing Baker was that he was going to be enough of a Band-Aid for us to carry over, for us to like not move in a succinct direction, not blow up the Brady, Arians, Gronk Super Bowl teams and rebuild, and not be good enough to like go all in. We have another window here where we could potentially win a Super Bowl, and unfortunately that's kind of where we're at now. I like Baker. He played better than I thought he was going to. I like him as a person. I think he's a good enough quarterback. I think he deserves to be a starting quarterback in the NFL. I think over his career he's shown that. But I don't know if we can win with him unless we make some significant improvements in other areas. Go ahead.
I got sleeper. So Zach Moss and Eckler back to back.
I'm taking Moss every day.
Jalen Warren.
I might take Eckler there after what we talked about a couple weeks ago with Jalen Warren.
I'd still take Warren because if he's Algier, like that was a better. Then I think it's going to be pretty similar.
What was that thing that we said though about, you were like, I'm not taking Najee anywhere, and then we had to apply the same logic to Jalen Warren with the Steelers,
right? Because they brought in CPAT and it's Arthur Smith, and you don't know how it's going to be split up. But the thing is, like, if Brian Robinson gets hurt, I don't think Eckler becomes a 3-down back. They're going to use Chris Rodriguez. If Najee gets hurt, I think Jalen Warren plays 80% of the snaps and CPAT plays 20%, you know?
Sure. Sure.
Singletary, I'd rather have Singletary. Trey Benson and Brian Robinson, straight up. I don't really think that even matters. Like, who cares?
Yeah.
I'd probably rather have Robinson because he's 10 picks later. But then Tyjae Spears, Gus Edwards, Blake Corum, Zeke, Chase Brown, Jerome Ford, Charbonnet, Hubbard, Kendre Miller, Jalen Wright, Rico Dowdle, Marshawn Lloyd, Ty Chandler, but these are like 100 picks later. So
yeah, all right. So we should put some sort of an investigative bet into this because we've spent 20 minutes now talking about Austin Eckler. So
right, I would bet that he finishes with under 100 fantasy points on the year.
I'll take that bet. That's 50 receptions in a half-point league.
I mean, 50 receptions is only 25 points, so.
In a half-point league?
Yeah, 50 divided by 2 is 25. So you need like It depends on how many yards
Oh
per
yeah,
reception
yeah.
they
Sorry,
get.
I my math was incorrect
You
in
were
math in
doubling
there.
it.
Yeah, I was doubling it. It's a 2 point per reception league. Let's fucking get it, dude. I'll still take the bet. Whatever. I'm already locked in. I'll die on the hill. All right. So what I was finishing up with the Bucks is that you know, Baker's still in like a very similar situation to where he's been in his whole career. Like, sure, he's got the same team, he's got very similar weapons, and he's got good weapons. Like, I mean, Evans, Godwin, White, Otten, like he's got good weapons. But it's a new offensive coordinator, which has been the key to Baker's entire career. Is no matter what, he just gets a new offensive coordinator every single year. So he never has a chance to like repeat any of the success or really like flourish in a system because Canales is gone and we're bringing in an entirely new system. So I like if I'm being honest, I think that we regress this year and we're going to have a harder schedule, but it's going to be tough for me to pick against them in a lot of these games, which is I don't know. That's where my fandom comes in. But I mean, key additions and subtractions. Obviously, the key one is going to be Canales because
Their
the offense.
schedule is
Yeah, I know it's not good. They're. I'm trying to delay that as long as possible. So, additions,
yeah, like their non-divisional games, right? Like the teams they get who
yeah, they're
aren't
rough.
in because they play the AFC West, which is not a great division. They play the NFC East, which is a middle of the road division. But they San Francisco, Kansas City, Baltimore, Detroit, right? Those are the four non-divisional games they get. Like,
Yeah, I know it's rough, man. It really is.
okay,
Like
so
we brought back Jordan Whitehead. We re-signed Antoine Winfield to a long-term deal. We got Levante David for another year. Ryan Jensen retired, but he's been retired for 2 years now,
he
essentially.
hasn't
So that
played,
doesn't,
yeah.
yeah, that really doesn't matter. We lose Devin White, but I mean, Devin White, for as much as I'll always love him for that playoff run, he was kind of a locker room cancer last year. I mean, we thought we were going to lose him going into the year, and I think he stayed on just to get another run with Brady and see what happened. But he was not super happy being in Tampa. He wanted to be paid like he was Ray Lewis, and he just wasn't watching him. He's fast. He's a great coverage linebacker, but he's kind of soft when it comes to tackling in the open field. Like he would miss guys, and it was always super frustrating.
And they drafted center Graham Barton from Duke, who's like the most versatile lineman who can play all over, which I
Yeah, which
think
I'm happy about. I mean, I'd rather have him than a non-existent Jensen and having to staple together
right.
an offensive line. A Sterling Shepard could probably start in the slot, which
I feel
or no, I
like
mean, maybe not start in the slot, but he'll be our third wide receiver because he'll probably put Godwin is a better slot receiver, but
they have
he'll
Trey
play.
Palmer listed as the outside receiver and Godwin as the slot.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, I like Trey Palmer. I do think that he needs to develop a little bit more. I'd
So
be
this
interested to see how he looks though with if he gets a 17 game workload.
right, Gadicki, how do you pronounce that?
um, the world may never know.
Was he good for them last year?
Um, he wasn't bad. How do you spell his name actually?
Goedeke.
I think it's Godkey.
Okay. Because I mean, I know Malik or Mock, the guy they drafted without the teeth, was good at guard.
Yeah.
They have Worse at left tackle. They have Bredesen from the Giants as a free agent at left guard, and then they've Graham Barton playing center. Um, so that's not a. I think that's a much better line. Defensively, they still have Vita Vea, Tryon Shoyinka. He's a stud. Cansey's a stud. Yaya was a really good player for them last year.
We lost Carlton Davis to Detroit, and he was our
Right.
number one. He was our number one outside corner. So we have to rebuild a bit of the secondary, and frankly, a lot of it's going to come down to health too, because I think there was like 9 games last year where we weren't at full strength in the secondary and we were missing somebody. Um, I said we brought back Jordan Whitehead. I like Jamel Dean, but I don't know if he's like a true like number 1 corner.
Right.
So I mean, it's going to come down to the pass rush, which
Who knows?
yeah, who knows? So I mean, like, I don't know. This is going to be a tough year just because of the schedule, really. Like, I think that in the division we should be okay. The Falcons games are going to be tougher than they were last year, but the Falcons played us well last year. So, I mean, week 1 against the Commanders, I think we win that game. I've actually been taking the Bucks in some mocks with defenses because they play the Commanders week 1. We go to Detroit. We probably lose that game. We get Denver at home. I think that's a win. We lose to the Eagles. We lose to the Falcons in Atlanta. We lose to the Saints in New Orleans because we usually do. We
So
lose to
you
the
think
Ravens.
they lose in Atlanta?
Yeah, I think we lose in Atlanta, man. I mean, the Falcons played us well last year without a quarterback.
Right. Fair.
So yeah, I think we lose to the Falcons. And like, if you remember that game that where like Bijan was like active but like didn't play randomly, that was against the Bucks.
Was it? I did not remember that.
I'm almost positive. So like, you know, I mean, that's a big difference. So yeah, I think we lose in Atlanta. I think we lose to the Saints in New Orleans. I think we lose to the Ravens. I think we beat the Falcons at home. I think we lose to the Chiefs in Kansas City. We lose to the 49ers. I think did I miss the bye week?
No.
No, I'm at the bye week now. All right. So I'll go back because I went kind of fast. So beat the Commanders, lose to the Lions, beat the Broncos, lose to the Eagles, lose to the Falcons, lose to the Saints, lose to the Ravens.
Yeah, so you got them 3 and
Beat the
7.
Falcons, lose to the Chiefs, lose to the Niners. So yeah, they're like 3 and 7 going into the bye. Then we come out, we beat the Giants, we beat the Panthers, we beat the Raiders, we beat the Chargers. So we go on like a 4-game winning streak coming out of the bye. So that brings us back to even. But then we've got Cowboys, Panthers, Saints to close out the year. So we probably go, I think we go 2-1, just looking at the schedule in the last 3.
They're 9 and 8, which is exactly what they were last year.
Right. And so it's going to come down to the divisional matchups, right? If we can sweep, like if we have to sweep the Panthers, and if we can find a way to sweep either the Saints or the Falcons, I think we could be a better team than we were last year by a game or so.
100%.
Yeah, but a lot of it is going to be wait and see, man, because it's a new offense. So just like we don't know. The Falcons were also wait, hold on. NFC South standings. I think technically, if we're just going in order,
I think it's the Saints.
It's the Saints, yeah.
Definitely not the Panthers.
Yeah, the Panthers are going to be bad. The Saints schedule.
I mean, the Saints are interesting, let's be honest, for one reason and one reason only, is Kubiak going to change their offense in any way, shape, or form? And if he's not, then they will be one of the most boring teams once again in football.
Yeah.
And that's pretty much it.
Yeah, there's some
sucks. Their defense is mid. Can Chris Olave and Alvin Kamara do something or not? And that's pretty much it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think they beat the Panthers week 1. I think they lose to the Cowboys. They lose to the Eagles. I'm going to split them in the division. So I think they lose to the Falcons. They lose to the Chiefs. They beat the Bucks to stay consistent. They beat the Broncos. Yeah. beat
We
the
had them beating
Chargers.
the Chargers, yeah.
They beat the Panthers.
They beat the Falcons.
They beat the Falcons. They lose to the Browns, and then they get the bye. So where are they at right now?
6-5.
6-5. Okay, so they might be in first place at this point in the season. Then they get the Rams coming to New Orleans. I think that's a loss. They go to New York. That's a win. They go to Washington. That's a win. They go to Green Bay. That's a loss. They get the Raiders coming in. I think that's a win. And then
They
they
lose.
get the Bucks last week of the season. So what are they at?
9-8.
9-8. Okay. So yeah, I mean, dude, like it's like I think the most interesting team in this division is going to be the Falcons because they're the ones that added the most. They're going to get an
Right.
easier schedule because they were the third team in the division. So I mean, let's take a look. They get the Steelers week 1. I think we had the Steelers winning that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So they start off 0-3. They lose to the Steelers, Eagles, and Chiefs.
Then they beat the Saints,
They beat the
Bucks,
Saints
Panthers.
and they beat the Bucks and the Panthers. So they're 3-3.
I
They get
think
the Seahawks coming to Atlanta.
they probably win that game.
I think they probably win that game. Then they lose to the Bucks in Tampa. They lose to the Cowboys. They lose to the Saints.
Beat the
They
Broncos.
beat the Broncos into the bye. Where are we at?
5-6.
5-6. Okay. Then they beat the Chargers in Minnesota. I think.
So if you look at, we got 6 games here left. I think they beat easily, like the Chargers, Giants, Commanders, Panthers, to me, with some ease.
Yeah.
And then it's the Vikings and Raiders are the 2 interesting ones to me.
Yeah, I mean, they get the Raiders in Vegas, but I still think they're a better team than Vegas. They have a better quarterback.
To be honest, both of those teams at this point in the season could be like tanking because the Vikings could have McCarthy playing by then and just like whatever.
Well, that's what I was going to say. I think by this point in the year, McCarthy is playing.
Right.
So I think they beat the Vikings. I think they beat the Raiders.
Yeah, I mean, we could coin flip either of them, but I don't know that it's like, I mean, right now they're 9-6 without those 2 games.
Yeah, so I mean,
they're probably like 10-7.
This was my fear going through this division. Like, obviously, I want to, homer and put the Bucks as the number 1 team, but like, I think the Falcons' additions and strength of schedule is going to do them a favor, and I don't think it's a long-term favor because I think if they play the Bucks schedule, they are a 9-8, 8-9 team. And
I mean,
think
this
that
division's going to come down to like
the divisional games.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because outside of the division, they get the North, or they get the NFC East, which I think all these teams will go 2-2 against, and they get the AFC West, which I think most of them will go 3-1 against. Right. And so you're looking at like 5-3 for these teams in their non-divisional games. You're looking at 4-2 for all of them in the division, right? Which is 9-5. So then you're looking at they have 3 non-divisional games, and how are they going to do in those? And that's based on your seeding. The Bucks have the hardest, the Saints have the second hardest, the Falcons. So it will come down to like, can you beat the Falcons twice? Like,
yeah, which like. I don't know, man. I can that Vikings game is in Minnesota. which is a
Right.
Kirk revenge game, which is might be a primetime game.
The one thing that is the Bucks, it's a severe disservice that they play the Falcons twice in October and they don't get another game against the Falcons. Whereas like they get the Saints and Panthers week 17 and 18. Like that's because if you're trying to catch the Falcons, you might not be able to.
Yeah, it's going to come down to Kirk's health too, because I think if Penix gets in there, they lose some games.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, I'm comfortable saying that the Falcons win the division at this point in the year. I think based on the same metrics that we've been using to judge the schedules for the rest of the league, you know, barring injury, I think that they have the best quarterback in the division.
Yeah.
And their weapons are good. London is
Yeah.
good. He's shown that he can play, especially if he gets some consistency. Kyle Pitts is Kyle Pitts. I mean, who knows with that guy? But, Bijan is a guy for sure. And if they actually give him the workload that he should have gotten last year, I mean, that guy's being drafted in the first round of all fantasy drafts.
Right.
So I think offensively, I think they're fine. And defensively, they're an underrated team.
Right.
So, I mean, the Panthers, we can probably just fly through this, right? I mean, they lose to the Saints. Did we have them beat? I think we had the Chargers beating them.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, I think because we said Herbert over Bryce Young.
Herbert over Bryce Young, yeah. So they lose to the Saints. They lose to the Chargers. They lose to the Raiders. They lose to the Bengals. They lose to the Bears. Lose to the Falcons. I think we had the Commanders beating them.
Yep.
Okay. So they lose to the Commanders. This team's gonna go 0-17. I mean, they lose to the Broncos. They lose to the Saints. They lose to the Giants. They lose to the Chiefs. They lose to the Bucks. They lose to the
We had the Giants
Eagles.
as a coin flip because it was Germany. But do you see any wins in there?
No, I don't see any wins in here except for maybe the Giants in Germany.
Right.
So they're 0-16-1.
Yep.
So, I mean, my division picks then at this point in the season is Falcons, Bucks, Saints, Panthers.
Falcons, Bucks, Saints, Panthers.
Yeah. And it comes down to health, right? Because Carr and Cousins have both proven that they can get hurt. So if both of them do get hurt, it's GG's and the Bucks win the division again at 9-8.
Yeah, I mean, pretty self-explanatory to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, I enjoyed watching the Bucks last year because, we were a better team than we should have been, and we were in pretty much every game that we played for the most part for the most of the game, except for like that Eagles game. We really couldn't get anything going. In the playoffs, we revenged that though. But yeah, I mean, I'm gonna enjoy watching them again this year. It's gonna be another year where, kind of similar in feel, but not similar in results and outcomes to like the last year of Jameis in Tampa, where we were like 7-9. We lost a bunch of games that we should have won just based on turnovers. But I think the difference is going to be that we'll lose some games that we could win just based on offensive performance.
Right.
Because we were in a bunch of those games because Jameis was just whipping the ball around, and Baker's not going to do that. But he's also like, the offense is not going to put up 35, 40 points a game like the Jameis Bucks could.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah. So.
But their defense is probably better than the Jameis Bucks.
I mean, it depends on what part of the season. I mean, the end of the season, we were like a top five defense in like most metrics. But the beginning of the season, we couldn't stop anything. We were like Swiss cheese. So, all right. So at this point, I think we've got the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Falcons making the playoffs.
Yep.
Um, just looking at how many playoff, there's 7 playoff teams now.
Yes.
Yeah. So look, just like, quick glance at the NFC. I think we'll get the Lions and the Packers out of the North. So that'll be 5. And then we get the Niners and the Rams out of the West. So that'll be 7. And I think that um, that's kind of how the NFC is going to break down. But we are going to have to look at the schedules. But I think that, I think the Lions and the Packers are both very good teams.
Right.
And
Yeah.
the Niners are obviously a very good team, and the Rams still have some juice left.
Yeah. I mean, that pretty much sounds right to me.
Yeah. All right. So mock time.
Yeah.
Let's hit it. I'm gonna try to do this one off of my phone because when I did a bunch of them yesterday and it was like very efficient.
Okay. Why don't you make me host and
Yeah.
I will
No, of course.
go to sleeper.
Yeah, I tried some new things yesterday, just screwing around, and I kind of liked some of the results that I had. I didn't like save or screenshot all of my teams, but I tried just like, taking some guys at some spots or reaching for some guys just to build my team the way that I want to. And I'm starting to learn the ADP a little bit more.
Right. The one problem is like we're not doing it on sleeper, but it's the only platform that allows you to do this, you know?
Yeah, I mean, we're not doing we're not doing the Rutgers draft on sleeper, but I mean that's a 10-team league anyway, so it's like,
Right.
you know, all right, let's see. So can I join this on my computer and then do it on my phone is going to be the question. Yeah, I can. Um, okay, so yeah, I'm in here on my phone, so I'm gonna exit out of the computer screen.
Okay. Well, let us
Randomize it.
randomize the draft order
Oh, and share your screen too.
and we will watch as once again.
It's not gonna happen this time. I'm gonna get a low pick and you're gonna get a high pick.
Let's hit that again because it changed nothing. All right. Three randomizes is the charm.
Okay.
Interesting.
All right. Hill and McCaffrey go. So who do you have as your best wide receiver in this clump of like CD, Jefferson, Brown, St. Brown, Chase, and AJ Brown?
Right, you're throwing AJ Brown and Chase in there too.
Throwing AJ Brown and Chase in there too.
As
You
like
have
a
you have Chase lower than like CD and St. Brown and Jefferson.
like the way that I would draft them is probably Lamb, Hill.
Well, Hill's already gone. That's I didn't include
Right,
him.
but I'm just saying, like, I would go Lamb, Hill, Chase, AJ Brown, Amon-Ra, Jefferson.
Yeah. Okay. That
Um,
answers my
that
question.
Yeah, that's how I would rank them for me personally. But I think Tyreek, Lamb, and Chase are in one tier for me, and then Amon-Ra and AJ Brown, and then Jefferson to me is like Puka Nacua, Garrett Wilson, like ahead of that tier.
Yeah.
But uh, smart. Okay, so Bijan at 8, Brees Hall at 11, Drake London at 12. That's pretty nuts to me.
Yeah.
Puka, Saquon, Marv. That's not terrible on Marv. Brandon Ayuk really hopped up there.
Which is
Um,
interesting because didn't he officially request a trade?
yes,
Yeah.
Kyron Williams, and then you're on the clock.
Yeah. So
Interesting. So you
well,
just
is that because if you're picking after me, like there's a chance he just doesn't make it back to me in the third.
fair.
So
I
yeah,
was not going to take him in the third because I
and
wasn't going to
and that's
lower.
fine. The way that I'm looking at it though is like, you know, I think he's my number one quarterback this year. I guarantee the sack with AJ Brown. And of the guys here, like, I'm not
Right.
really interested in any of these running backs in the second. And, between like, I mean, Olave is going to go probably here. And then, we've got a couple tight ends, Evans, Debo, Diggs, Pacheco, Moore, Waddle, Neighbors, like these Pittman, these are all guys that I'm fine missing. Like we talked about this, how like the second round is like a minefield and a clusterfuck. So my strategy here is like I'm going to lock in a guy that I want on my team with AJ Brown and just skip all of the question marks of the second round.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's fair.
Yeah. I want to see what you do here though.
Um, I'm just gonna go Olave.
Yeah,
Like
I figured that would happen.
I don't feel the need to go Josh Allen.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so this is where it's interesting because it's like if I'm going running back, it's Henry. I don't. Yeah, the running backs are all going to be gone. So if I don't take Henry, I'm doing zero RB. And the problem to me this year with doing zero RB, not problem, but the interesting conundrum is the wide receiver value in round 4 and 5 to me, as well as the tight end value, are crazy good. So
Yeah.
it's like if I go a third, like if I go Kelsey here, I feel like I'm fucking myself because I can't get the value of like Mark Andrews in maybe round 5 or Kincaid
Yeah.
in round 5. You know what I mean? So it's like, and if I go wide receiver, like, do I want to go Debo as my wide receiver 3? Like, I don't hate that, but like, what's the difference between Debo and DK Metcalf or Debo and Amari Cooper? You know, like, so to me, I go Henry because I do think there's a difference between Henry and Alvin Kamara, or Joe Mixon.
Right. So if Debo was available there in the third, I would have taken him as my wide receiver too.
Right, which is a good build.
Yeah. So in this case, I'm looking at Kelsey or I'm looking at reaching for a guy. I'm gonna reach and see how I like it. Because the more that I This is because, like, all right, so here's the thing with taking the quarterback in two is similar to what you were saying. If I go Kelsey here, then I'm essentially committing to a zero RB build because I'm gonna have to go wide receiver in like the fourth or the fifth. And by that point, any of the running backs that I'm interested in will be gone. If I go wide receiver here, I'm still going to miss on running backs if I want to go with like a Kincaid or an Andrews. So I'm going to I'm going to try something. Okay, so that worked out fine. So I got AJ, I got DK, then I take James Cook in the fourth round.
Or you could have gone Cup too, but yeah.
I could have gone Cup too, but again, like, the wide receivers that are still available, like, all right, so we've got Andrews available and Kincaid. I figure you're going to take one of those guys. So there's a chance I get one of them coming back, in which case I still need more wide receivers. The wide receiver is pretty deep this year, but the wide receiver is still available. Like, as my wide receiver 3 or my flex, Zay Flowers, Tank Dell, T. Higgins, George Pickens, Amari Cooper, Keenan Allen, Christian Kirk. Like, there's still got Jaden Reed, who I'm actually rising on a little bit. Like, there's still guys that or Calvin Ridley's still in the draft too, Lad McConkey. There's still guys that like I am interested in. And for my third wide receiver, my flex, I'm comfortable with like maybe like a lower ceiling, higher floor type of guy, like a Christian Kirk or something like that.
So any thought to taking Pittman over DK or no?
Yeah, there's definitely thought. I had Pittman last year in Rutgers and I loved him.
Because I think, I mean, it worked out because you got James Cook, but I do wonder if you had taken Pittman if Metcalf would have made it back. Like slight
I've
chance.
yeah,
But
I've thought about that. But I think Metcalf has a higher ceiling and he has more touchdown upside. So, like, I think he led the league in red zone targets last year, if I'm not mistaken. So, like, I don't know if I'm shooting for the moon here, I just reach and take DK and see how I like the rest of the team. You took Amari Cooper, which I think is solid. Now, do you go? So Andrews is available. You took George Pickens. Okay, that's fair.
so I'm just looking at the board. It looks like there's a chance Evan Ingram maybe makes it back to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So to me, Kyler's my 6th round pick, right?
Has to be at this point.
Um, so it's like I'm kind of like, do I want to go Kyler and like Ramondre, Jaden Reed, or like Chris Godwin? Or would I rather go Kyler and Evan Ingram? And I kind of rather go Kyler and Evan Ingram because I have Derrick Henry. So I don't know that I want Henry and Andrews.
Yeah, that's a
Like,
good point. I'm going to take Andrews here, but just keep
right.
talking.
Just only because I think both of their values are in volume and touchdowns, right? And so if the Ravens are going to be good, which I think we both think they're going to be good.
Oh, motherfucker.
Were you hoping Christian Kirk?
Yeah, I was going to take Christian Kirk there for sure.
Yeah. So that's like my thing is just like I'd rather wait and get Evan Ingram, who I think is going to get a bunch of volume too, or even David Njoku. I mean, I do have Cooper, so maybe not Njoku, but
Yeah. I'm gonna take Jaden Reed. I've been rising on him a little bit in like not taking a stud quarterback builds if I because I think the first draft that we did, like I took Jordan Love as my quarterback, who finished as the quarterback 5 last year. And if I can like get like a low volume stack and take him with Jaden Reed, it's not a bad play. You took Ingram. You're celebrating because Ramondre's still on the board or Kyler's still on the board. Okay.
Tyler, like I looked at it and I was like, I want Ingram because the drop down to like Brock Bowers and whatever, like that's not what I want. But I have CD, so to me, I can take Ingram first because if I don't get Kyler, I'll stack CD with Dak, right? Because if we are saying like CD's 40% of the Cowboys offense,
You
then
want Dak.
right, and that's a good stack. It probably
Yeah.
won some people some titles last year, so
Yeah.
that was kind of my thought of like I'm gonna take Ingram, and if I settle for Dak, I settle. But
And I'm going to take Calvin Ridley to flex.
which great value.
Mm-hmm. Deontay Johnson goes. I think this is I like Lad McConkey, but this is a no-brainer pick in my opinion.
Yeah, that's the pick for sure.
Yeah.
And
Especially just like after we went through that last week about like how Joe Mixon actually finished last year.
right,
Um I think like Zach Moss, like there's a world where he's like the RB like 11 this year.
right. And so this is like an interesting spot because right, even if I had a tight end, I don't want Ferguson. I mean, but maybe there's an argument for having Ferguson and CD because there's so much that offense. Brian
Hey, let me
Thomas.
put it this way. Last year, I scored I think the second most points, or no, I scored the most points in a league and finished third. I just took a shit in the divisional round of the playoffs with my RB1 and wide receiver one as McCaffrey and Debo. So there's like you can make it work with having two starters on that aren't like a quarterback stack on the same team. But it does make weeks like remember that week where the Niners played the Browns and they just absolutely shit the bed. Like it's
Right.
tough. It's tough to recover from a situation like that. But at the tight ends, like Ferguson, as a Ferguson owner last year, there were weeks you were really happy and there were weeks where you were miserable. But he should get 5 points a game minimum. You could take
Right.
Austin Eckler.
Um, yeah, and like you could go Jalen Warren. I could go. So to me, what I'm gonna do is
You took Christian Watson. I like that pick.
yeah,
It's
because
it's a depth pick, but I like the pick.
yeah, he's on my bench, right? But it's
Yeah.
also like, what's the difference between Jalen Warren and Tajay Spears, right? Like, um, and I actually think I'm gonna go Gus Edwards because I just want a guy who can play football.
Yeah, that's fair. All right. And this is the fun part where we start just queuing guys up based on pure upside. And I'm going to do that. Okay. So I am going to go. I'm gonna take Tajay here because I actually think that he's a great handcuff, but he's gonna get snaps on a weekly basis. Scroll down a little
Right.
bit.
Uh,
Okay, so now this is Blake Corum. Yeah. Oh my God. I was gonna take Curtis Samuel. You took Jerome Ford. Lockett and Dobbs go. So I'm gonna go. That screwed me up a little bit because Curtis Samuel is like a guy that I've been trying to get in all of my drafts.
right. He's
Um,
free. Like,
he's free-ish. I'm gonna go. Uh, uh, that really kind of screwed me. So I'm gonna go with Chuba. Then we're gonna throw Josh Palmer in there.
Franklin going. Interesting. So I'm gonna go Jalen Wright. And then we'll go Rico Dowdle. Just in case.
And I'm gonna go Brandon Cooks because somebody else in Dallas has to catch passes.
Right.
Damn, someone took my last pick. My
Who?
last pick in all my sleeper drafts has just been Taysom Hill.
Oh yeah, just for fun.
Well, not even just for fun, because there could always just be that week where Carr goes down and Taysom is the quarterback,
Right. Yeah.
which is just a free 20 points at tight end. So I am going to go with the missile.
And I'm just gonna go Wicks. Because why not?
Yeah. Okay. So pull up your team for a second on screen. Kyler, Henry, Gus, Ceedee, Olave, Cooper, Ingram's, Pickens. Yeah, like I mean, I really like this team. I think it's very good. I think
Yeah, and I'm
drafting in the third slot, if you can somehow finagle that, it's going to benefit you greatly.
and I will go in on running backs off the waiver wire, but I doubt that I will need much wide receiver depth for the year. And to me, I feel good like CD's locked in as an alpha, Olave, if he can be a wide receiver too, and then like the 3-pack of Cooper, Pickens, and Watson, like on any given week, there's probably a 50. I mean, there's probably like a 40% chance two of them boom on certain weeks. You know what I
For
mean?
sure.
And that'll win you a week.
Yeah. So I went. I don't know. Can you pull up my team on there?
Yes, I can. Click on. Oh, can I not? Or wait, can I? I can go. Okay. Great.
Yeah. So the Hertz Brown stack is, it's something I reached for, but I wanted to see how the team would come out. And I don't mind this team. I think it's fine. I wish I had another wide receiver that like I really liked, but I took Andrews instead, which if he's healthy, he is, another wide receiver. He's going to get the most targets on that team, which I'm okay with. I've been rising more on James Cook as the season's gone along because I do think that Buffalo saw their most success later in the year when they ran the ball and gave the ball to the running back more. And with the lack of outside options, I think that it's all signs are pointing towards increased James Cook usage. So I've been trying to get him in the fourth round as like my anchor running back. And the thing is like, if I'm in a situation where I have the chance to draft Lamb, McCaffrey, Hill, or Chase, I don't end up with AJ Brown. So I don't draft Hurts as high, in which case my build ends up more similar to yours, where I've got Kyler, or if I've got CD, I'll go Dak or somebody quarterback later, and I can get that extra wide receiver. But I do think that Hurts finishes as the quarterback one this year. So I like having him. I like having Brown. I like having Cook. I really like having Moss. I think he's an auto if he's there in the 8th round. Yeah. And then, Brown, DK, Reed, and Ridley. Like, Reed is a ceiling pick because I'm banking on him and Love getting another year together and him kind of taking a step. And then Ridley, he's good value for where he's getting drafted. So I like this team. There's always going to be something that I can do differently that I would prefer to do. But if I'm in a position where I'm drafting AJ Brown, I'm going to want to get Jalen Hurts because of the upside there.
100%.
Yeah. All right. So yeah, I mean, final thoughts. Next time we do the rest of the NFC, another mock. How'd the Yankees do today? I know you were talking shit about them.
They lost.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Bases loaded, 1 out. First 2 innings, no runs. First and second, 1 out in the third, no runs.
Yeah, I mean, this is a typical Yankees box score. Soto goes 3 for 5. Judge goes 2 for 4 with a walk. Rice went over 3, but he did get on base twice with 2 walks. Volpe 1 for 3 with a walk. Cabrera actually went 2 for 4. That's a nice change of pace. They got DJ out of the lineup, which is nice. Stroman going 5 and giving up 2. You'll take that.
Yeah,
you'll take that. Bad. Yeah, you'll take that any day of the week. Who else gave up the runs? Cousins, not great.
Yeah, and we gave up 1 in the last inning.
When's the trade deadline? It's like what, end of the month?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, we'll see what happens, I guess. We can't hold. We know what we need to do. It's just whether or not we actually do it. So these next 10 days are really just like, okay, what are we actually going to do?
And I would venture a guess that we probably do nothing because that's at least nothing of importance.
Right. All right. So we will continue this next time. We'll finish off the NFC, do another mock, and by that point, maybe we'll have some signs of trade life for the Yankees, but Dylan definitely doesn't think so.
No, I don't. I don't have much hope, and that's okay.
What do you think about USA basketball beating like fucking Zimbabwe by like 1 point or whoever it was that we were playing?
Yeah, South Sudan, not good.
Yeah.
And couldn't afford to lose, so we didn't. Right, that's at least good.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, we should have done much better. I don't think Steve Kerr has really figured out the lineups yet, but
All right. Till next time, though, I got a jet.
All right, later.
Later.